Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business.
All right, today we have with us Chip Ridge, who's the founder of Millennial Title, and that's a slight title change that we're probably going to dive into here in a little bit. But Chip, tell us about your little bit about your background, what you do, and tell us a little about Millennial Title as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate it. Look forward to this discussion. So Chip Ridge, I am from Louisville, Kentucky. That's where I'm seated. I'm married, have 4 kids. I actually have triplets. They're going to be freshmen in high school. So
Wow.
That's a journey in itself, and preparing for having 4 kids in high school, and I have a rising senior. So that keeps me on my toes when I'm not here in the mainline business. I think that's why I'm a workaholic. Haha. So for a lot of different reasons, both from an emotional and a financial standpoint. But been in the real estate space for now going over 20 years. Prior to that, I used to build boats. That's a little known fact about me. I was in the boat business for about 8 years out of college. But then in about 2001, got in the real estate business and specifically dove into title. Had a company called Heritage Title that the partner and I sold in 2007 to BB&T Insurance Services. And then I went back out on my own and started Millennial Title in 2015 and have been tinkering with that for the last 8 or 9 years. And then also working some other verticals as well as an investor, advisor. Really enjoy just working with smaller companies and trying to figure out ways to, grow them and help them and be there in whatever capacity I can to help.
Very cool. So you founded actually 2 title companies. So you're a 2-time founder just in that one industry. What is it that made you want to do that? I mean, it's not an industry that's changed a lot. I mean, technology, I guess, has changed it a lot, but it seems like the process, maybe I'm wrong, educate me. So what's led you to be a founder of 2?
Yeah, well, so the first one, which would be Heritage, which is back in, I think, founded it in 2003. I'd worked in a title company when I finished the boat company. I'd actually gotten my MBA from Vanderbilt, and I needed to switch careers, and my wife it was time to get out of the boating lifestyle. So I was just looking for different opportunities and happened upon, this is back when you could actually read the paper and look in the classifieds. And there was a job posting. It said manager insurance. I was like, well, heck, I can manage, and I think I know insurance. And I went, and the guy quizzed me, said, well, so, what do you know about title insurance? And to be honest with you, I knew very little. I said, well, I bought a house, and, I knew that. And lo and behold, it was a company called Metropolitan Title. I worked there a couple of years, and they had a guy that was a really leader in the industry and pretty inspirational guy. And they wanted me to move to Michigan. And my wife, at the time, actually, we lived in Lexington, Kentucky. She was not for that. And so she had a job in the pharmaceuticals field. And so just, wasn't willing to do that, and then started to think about it. And I felt like I knew enough to be dangerous. Found a partner, and we started Heritage Title Services. And, we grew that over about a 5-year period of time. And we went from, at the time, 3 people to, I think when we sold, we had about 40 people, and we had 5 different offices. And BB&T Insurance, which is part of the bank, they were looking to grow their footprint. So it just ended up great place, right time. And that was right at 2007.
Yeah.
And
great time to get out of that market.
Yeah. As I always say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I would suggest that there was lot more luck probably involved in that than I would even admit. But we landed in there with BB&T. It was a great company. Really enjoyed it. But after some time, I really felt like I needed to get back out and be in my own space, my own lane. And the second iteration, Millennial Title, even though I'm not a millennial, our sort of core values, our focus was to build a title company on top of technology and the ever changing title space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been challenging, though. Can't lie. I mean, we've had some success, but you mentioned the title industry has not embraced change. If at the what I would really consider really leaning in on it. And so we're in the midst of trying to really figure out how we can accelerate some of that with everything else that's going on in the real estate space today.
Yeah. So tell me about what you're trying to do. And full disclosure for listeners, I used you guys a few years ago to refi my house, and one of the things that I always heard from Bo, who's one of your attorneys, is about how you guys aren't your typical title company and how you do things different and that sort of thing. So, in a nutshell, what is it you're trying to do different in a space that hasn't changed that much?
Yeah, good question. And it's something that we're constantly trying to sort of figure out and distill it down. But in the grand scheme of things, we really want to simplify the process. We want to make it more transparent for the client. A lot of times, you're working with a real estate agent, and you're working with, in some cases, a mortgage person. You might be working with a builder, what have you, and then we're sort of sprung up at the last minute and to say, hey, send us a bunch of money and come sign a bunch of documents and we'll call it a day. So we're really working to try to re-engineer that workflow so that we have early simplify the process and make it more transparent so that our value proposition is a bit elevated. And I do think with the real estate agents and some of the things with commission structures being restructured, there's an opportunity for us in the title space really to elevate our brand and our role, and to take on a little bit more responsibility, and hopefully be a real resource for us. So we're constantly trying to figure out. We do remote online notarization, which is a great tool that makes it very easy for borrowers, especially like in your case with a refi. You came in our office. Well, why can't we just make it where you sit it right there where you are today and click, 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 sign, and not really, not have to go through extra steps. And then we also think about just how do we make the seller's life easier. For their, a lot of times now people are moving, maybe they're moving out of the state. How do we make it where they're not, impositioned by the buyer and how their scheduling works. So, and then on top of the last thing I'll add is, really contemplating how AI is going to play into this. I know it's a buzzword. I know a lot of people just use it sort of freely, but for what we do, there is a lot of impact because it can create reporting and it can create databases and create information that's very powerful. That if we can channel that and harness that correctly, can make a faster, more secure and in a lower cost transaction. So there's win-win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI has I always people say, oh, AI is not going to impact my business. I'm like, you're crazy. It already is. And it's probably going to impact it even more once you figure out, what roles can we really streamline. And I don't know
Yeah.
that it's going to eliminate that many jobs. I just think it's going to shift a lot of, kind of mundane work. And I hate to say, not that not belittling anyone's work, but some work that's easily repeatable can be turned over to a bot that will do a lot of stuff, and it's
Yep.
having
Yep. We
profound
agree.
changes. Yeah, it's having some profound changes. Um, So I know you're going through some structural changes in your leadership. So you're taking a different role. Tell us about that transition.
Yeah, so we named Bo Baustein, who you know and work with. He was our lead closing attorney here in our Louisville office. And he's been with the company about 3 years now, and he's just done a great job. He checks all the boxes, and for me, is you're sort of looking at my long term where I want to position both personally and also organizationally. I think it is important to have some fresh thoughts and leadership. That's what Bo brings,
Mhm.
and so for us to really live out the mission that we want to do, which is really connect with our core, our core client. His generation is our core client, and so
Mhm.
I think he's well positioned to really make sure that the company serves that. And then also, I've been working on some other real estate investments and working in some development and also some senior living. So it frees me up to get to lean in on some of those projects and have the bandwidth that I need, but not let Millennial Title and what we want to do in that company sort of wane. So I think it's important just to put the right people around you, and that's what I'm constantly thinking about really every day.
Mhm. Well, you got a good one there with Bo, and I look forward to catching up with him here soon as well. Just hear more about his journey. But so let's kind of go back to the founding. I always like to uh, challenge or get those challenging type questions of what are what was something that in those early years that caught you off guard that you weren't expecting. What was the biggest surprise? It may not, and I don't know if you'll have to go back to your first founding situation because you've obviously founded twice, but what was an early stage challenge that you ran into?
Yeah, there's a couple. It's funny. The first company I was, quite a bit younger. 20 years ago. So, I was sometimes the way they say ignorance is bliss. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that probably happened I didn't even realize. But there are a couple that just hit you right in the face. And I think one of them though that was interesting is we early on we had a data breach. This is back early in the heritage days and this is back when SQL servers and
Mhm.
it was very your information was very sort of segregated, and I mean we're still responsible, but there's these layers and with cloud computing and things, we take some of this stuff for granted, but we had a server breach and somebody was able to get in and they didn't steal the information. What they did is they erased it. And it was just it was a sort of a crazy moment where we had a database really wiped out and we had to jump through a bunch of hoops. And it was a very stressful and yet, there was no playbook that I could like pull out and say, okay, here's what we need to do. I did reach out and find a hardware specialist that was able to go in and help us piece some of the information back together. But for all intents and purposes, most of it was lost. So it was a heck of a lesson in one, building a better moat around our information structure.
Right.
We had it had shown us that there was a vulnerability there, but as importantly, how do we deal with our clients and how do we make sure that they're not so unnerved that they weren't willing to work with us again in the future, and then the current clients, the information that was impacted and so forth. So that was an unwelcome challenge that was early on, and it really our whole team had to really rally around, and we came in and worked weekends and nights to get the database back up and get it refreshed and make sure that nobody was no closings were delayed and none of that would happen. So that was an interesting and yet real gut check of just, hey, as an owner, everything sort of falls on your shoulders, whether you want it to or
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
in that case, I can tell you, I did not want to deal with that. But
No, of course not. And that's a great example because we just don't know what's going to get thrown at us in a business situation. And you weren't thinking about having to be the owner of a SQL database and what would be, be involved with hacking that. And you're probably fortunate that all you did was lose some data, um,
yeah,
compared to what's
100%.
going on today, where they completely
Yeah.
hold you ransomware and hold you hostage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's you probably learned a lesson, tightened up the hatches a little bit, and probably served you well. So, um, tough
Yeah.
lesson, but yeah. And working nights and weekends seems to be a phrase that we don't hear as often as we used to, either back. I'm a little older than you, but that was a common, the way we solved things back then. And it's, do you find your millennial and Gen Z workforce as willing to do that as you were back in the day?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, from culturally, you really have to. We talk a lot about work-life balance, and as a business owner and a uh, admitted workaholic,
Mhm.
work-life balance to me just looks different, at least in my own mind. I don't even consider it to be out of balance where some people I think probably would. So yeah, you have to be mindful. I would say, early on, one, I was not as empathetic to work-life balance, candidly. I was, young and hard charging and just, let's get it
Mhm.
done. And when you're building a business, especially at the start, you just really, and at the time didn't have kids, and it was full stop, 24/7.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was very much felt like everybody else should be on the same page there.
Yeah.
So you burn out some people, and you do. But now, one, I'm older and wiser, I think, and then secondarily, you're right. I think from just a mindset of the workforce in general. We've got some ladies that are with us now at Millennial. They're older. They're from a prior, what I'd call sort of prior vintage of culture, and they come in on their own free will and work weekends, and they'll stay late, and
Yeah.
they do a lot of stuff. Even I'm like shooing them out, like, hey, you can't, but that's in their sort of in their DNA, and
Yeah,
they
it
enjoy
is.
it. They'll tell you, they're like, hey, if I didn't want to do this, I wouldn't, but I like to. I feel like I need to. It's a responsibility, which is wonderful. But we are realistic, and you probably see this a lot, that the mindset has definitely shifted on that. I'm not
Mhm.
saying for the worse, but it just has,
Uh,
and
y-
you have to build the culture accordingly.
yeah, and I'm a older Gen X. I'm on the Gen X boomer border, but I'm more of a Gen X at heart, I think. And I'm Gen X. We all wanted. I say we because I assume that's where you are as well. We wanted more balance, but we also had that hardworking DNA that our parents had built into us. So we kind of had this, and so we started like asking for things like flex time and you know casual, we're dressing casual now. When I started my career, you wore a suit and tie every day to work,
Yep.
and so we were able to accomplish some things, but they're kind of surface things, right? And I think millennials especially have come along and said, okay, screw that surface stuff.
Yeah.
We want real change, and we're really, yeah. When I said I'm leaving at 5 o'clock today, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock today, or whatever, and that's a little. Sometimes a challenge for a Gen X leader, or a Boomer leader that might be out there dealing with the millennials or Gen Z, because they mean it when they say you know
And
they
we have to qualify that a little bit, John, because of the nature of our business, and just sometimes it can be chaotic depending on the time of the month, or there's instances where, a closing has to happen. and,
yeah.
and so we have to, we do, when we're going through the sort of the recruiting process, we talk about that. Now we try to say, hey, this isn't an everyday thing,
Hmm.
but there are going to be moments in time where we just got to dig in and get it done for the client. So that it's not for everybody, and
Yeah.
that's just the realities. And we have those open and honest conversations like, hey,
Yeah.
this job is not for everybody because of some of the times the demands will not, you can't contain them like you would like to. And it might not
Mhm.
seem fair, but
Yeah.
it is what we've signed up for.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are you excited about for Millennial? I mean, obviously, you got a change in leadership, and that's an excitement. But is there anything on the horizon that you really are hoping to transform?
Yeah, and we're excited about what the next evolution looks like. I think there's, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of moving parts right now. I think lenders are looking at things a little differently because we went through this crazy boom during COVID of volume, and now it's settled down a great deal, and we're in this sort of lull, if you want to call it. And so
Hmm.
it's sort of forced us all to look at cost structure and workflows and fun stuff like that. I look at it as a fun opportunity to see how can we do it better, how can we do it more efficiently, and then on top of that, how do we embrace some of these technology tools that are out there that do make it easier for you and I to do a closing and for us to provide the services that we provide, and how do we relay that value out to our customer base, whether it be better pricing, whether it be just quicker service. What more convenience would probably be where we've leaned the most. So we're excited about those opportunities, and feel like we're well positioned to take advantage of that. All that being said, we'd like the market to pick up just like everybody else in our
Hmm.
space, and we're sort of hopefully we're ready and willing and able for when all that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. It will eventually. It's just a matter of market conditions.
Yeah,
But you seem to be pretty well positioned from what I see.
yeah.
So, last question. I always ask something along this line of, what advice would you have that, 20, 30-year, younger you that's out there thinking of starting, it doesn't necessarily be a title business, just interested in spinning up their own practice of some sort. What advice would you give them?
The first one that, and I, in my sort of hard headedness, was not always great about this, but surround yourself with. I had a great team. The people I worked with were excellent, but what I didn't do a great job of early on is sort of that mentorship piece, and I think that's
Mm,
huge. Finding somebody that can mentor you, somebody that who's been through the process, can help when you do have those really challenging moments. That's I mean, they don't necessarily have to be older, but I definitely think somebody who's walked the walk before, who's has some experience, they can bring that to the table. I joined a group called Vistage a while back, and I wish I would have done that 20 years ago because it's sort of opened my eyes to just getting better peer group feedback. It's one thing to get feedback from your teammates, and that's always super helpful to hopefully listen and collaborate. But it's also good to get feedback from non-participating parties
right.
that aren't in the weeds with you, that can sort of give you that 360 and
Yeah.
and not maybe have some of the confirmation biases that you have, or what recency biases that you bring. And so I've really enjoyed that, and I think that's been a big tool. And then lastly, that it's always, they say, work your plan, plan your work. The business plan is so important, to really sit down and dig in and know
Mm,
your numbers. If you don't know your
yeah.
numbers, you don't know anything. And there's been times where I've tried to revise numbers on the fly and hope that it just gets better. Well, hope's not a real strategy. So really know
Right.
your numbers and stick to them. So
That's some great advice, some wise counsel, and Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the stuff that I say. So I feel good about that. Well, Chip, it's been great talking to you. If folks want to contact you, or if they're looking for an opportunity, or needing to close on a loan, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, pretty easy. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so Chip Ridge and LinkedIn, it's ChipRidge. They can message me there, or Chip at millennialtitle.com, and that's two L's, two N's, title.com, all one word. And you can go to our website as well. But we're always interested just to work with people in real estate. I love just talking to people in business alone. So if any business, I'm always fascinated the way people, build things, make money, whatever you want to call it. I enjoy it. It's always fun. So thanks for having me.
Same here. Great conversation. Enjoyed it. And I know our listeners will as well. So thanks again.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.